Moving on to the next session, which is on design and innovation for sustainability, we'll focus on the design-led solutions to the challenges in the Himalayan region. And the session will be chaired by Professor Manisha Mohan, Dean Department of Design at UPES. Ms. Mohan was the Chief Design and Innovation at Tata Interactive Systems, TIS at Mumbai, and in her capacity, she had her team track design trends, did research and projects in emerging technologies such as virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. She and her team were also responsible for coming up with solutions, benchmarking design, and driving design thinking in the organization. She had been the assessor and team leader under the Tata Business Excellence Model, which is modeled around the Malcolm Bridge Excellence Framework. And over the years, Manisha had worked on learning games, simulations, animations for people across verticals and countries that have won several awards for design. Next speaker is Mr. Sonam Vanchuk, co-founder, Himalayan Institute of Alternative and Students Education and Cultural Movement of Ladakh. A mechanical engineer by education, Mr. Wangchuk has been mostly working in the field of education reform for more than 27 years. Through the organizations founded by him, he aims to bring reform in the government schools system in Ladakh. And as an engineer, he's been teaching innovation at the alternative schools, where together with the student, he designed and built solar heated buildings that are low cost, made of earth and mud, that maintain 15 degrees, plus 15 degrees during the winters when the outside temperature is minus 15 degrees. In order to solve the water crisis facing mountain regions due to climate change and melting glaciers, he invented the ice stupa artificial glacier, which stores the wasting stream waters in winter and releases the water in late spring. Mr. Wangchuk was granted several awards and titles, including the prestigious Rama Magsaysay Award in 2018, the Terra Award 2016 for World's Best Earth Building in Lyon, France, and the UNESCO Chair of Earth Architecture for India in 2014, among others. Our next speaker is Professor Ajit Kumar Chaturvedi, Director, IIT Roorkee, Uttarakhand. Professor Chaturvedi has served the Department of Electrical Engineering in IIT Banaras Hindu University. Subsequently, he joined the faculty of the Department of Electronics and Computer Engineering at IIT Roorkee, and as the director, he has been coordinator for the BSNL IITK Telecom Center of Excellence, which has done a large number of projects for the Indian telecom sector. He is a founding member of the Telecom Standard Development Society of India and was a member of DOT committee, which recommended criteria for spectrum allocation of two telecom operators in 2008. Our next speaker is Mr. Saurav Chaudhary, Associate Counsellor at the CII India Green Building Council. Mr. Chaudhary is currently involved in certification activities of LEEDs for India and CS projects and has been associated with the organization since 2018. His area of expertise are conceptualizing and designing of residential, institutional, recreational, defense, and airport projects. His area of interest includes green building and sustainable initiatives, affordable housing, renewable energy sector and policies, urban transport and railways, tourism infrastructure and urban infrastructure. Mr. Anupam Joshi is our next speaker, Senior Environmental Specialist, World Bank. Mr. Joshi is a trained ecologist having wide experience in the field of ecosystem analysis, biodiversity conservation, protected area management, habitat restoration, impact assessment and evaluations. He received his PhD from University of Delhi in 1997 and since then has worked with the Government of India Planning Commission, civil society, private sector companies. Presently, as a senior environmental specialist at the World Bank, Mr. Joshi works on issues related to natural resource management, biodiversity conservation, ecosystem service, landscape restoration, sustainable land management, climate smart agriculture, smart green infrastructure, and community livelihoods. He also supports projects to meet the World Bank's requirement on environmental safeguards and the new environmental and social framework. With this, may I request Professor Mohan to take the session forward.
Thank you so much, Shreya, for introducing all the esteemed panelists. It's indeed a pleasure and an honor to be on the same panel with such accomplished entrepreneurs, as well as scientists and educationists, and also different representations of individuals who have been supporting the cause of sustainability in different ways. I think a shared vision is very important for the cause that we are working towards in terms of sustainability in the Himalayas. And it's wonderful that these panelists are there as a part of this discussion. I think many of the problems of the Himalayas and the challenges of the mountains have been highlighted even in the previous session in terms of migration, the need to manage the environment and also the ecology and the biodiversity. This being a very sensitive area which involves 12 states, there is a need to really develop the local livelihoods, to support the environment, to also look at transformative agriculture, and also to look at how technology can play an important role in decision making. And looking at also some of the opportunities in terms of tourism and how to build it up, opportunities in terms of the crafts and how they can really spread across the country and across the world and provide a livelihood to some of the local craftsmen and really build the talent locally. So we are really at the backdrop of an amazing place, the Himalayas. I represent UPES, University of Petroleum and Energy Studies, which is a state university in Uttarakhand, in Dehradun. And we have 7 different schools, which really give an ideal backdrop for a multidisciplinary innovation. And the Himalayas provide us not only a beautiful backdrop, but also a great living laboratory for experimental research and innovation towards sustainability in different ways. As a university, we have been actually focusing on entrepreneurship as one important element through the UCIE, which is the UPS Council for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. We're a state nodal agency for promoting entrepreneurship in the state of Uttarakhand, as well as a business incubator. So a lot of our students and people around in the state of Uttarakhand had the opportunity for getting mentorship and support for entrepreneurship in this region. And in my role, I am the Dean for School of Design, as well as School of Life, a new initiative in which we are trying to build life skills among the students of UPS and the youth, and a sensitivity towards the environment. So in both these roles, the university is allowing me to sort of support and promote the youth in terms of building holistic individuals who are conscious of the environment and are supportive of the possibilities that the environment offers them. And to give you some examples, in School of Design, our students are exposed to environmental exposure, in which they get sensitized to the forests around, the birds and the villages and the needs of the villages in the neighborhood towns. And also they are exposed to the local material, as in, I think the previous session also touched upon bamboo being an important product of this region. So our students have the opportunity of exploring bamboo and seeing what the properties are, the tensile strength, etc., and creating products for this region. There are also shared research projects between students and faculty with Ringal. I think it was already mentioned by Mr. Sudhir Nautiyal in the previous session about Ringal and Ipan and some of these crafts, as well as the local material like bamboo that are there. So our students have been working with these and trying to create different products which would help in terms of value creation and supporting livelihoods among the craftsmen. And also, we are experimenting with how technology can make a difference. For instance, virtual reality and augmented reality. These are areas that we are really looking at in terms of important tools that can help to promote some of the crafts. For instance, a virtual reality exhibition has been designed by one of our students to promote the local crafts in this Uttarakhand area. And also an augmented reality solution, which is really looking at the biodiversity and identifying certain kinds of plants which are becoming rare over time. So it's really, we are really exploring the environment to see how design and technology and innovation can make a difference. So beyond that, we are working towards a vision of how our university as well as our School of Design can really contribute in a larger way to the Himalayan region and really where our students and faculty can really make a difference through research and innovation. So with that, I would really like to hand it over to our esteemed speaker, Mr. Sonam Vanchuk. It's really a privilege to have him over here with us because he is very well known as an innovator, as an engineer, as an educational reformist, and he really needs no introduction. I would request Mr. Vanchuk to really take on the keynote address from here. Thank you so much.
Can you see me and hear me? Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
we can.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Good morning. Namaste, all the participants in this event of CII. I'm very happy to be participating and sharing a little bit of my journey. I hope I'm audible and visible. Please let me know if anything goes wrong.
Yes, you are.
Very much.
So very happy also that you have chosen this theme on Himalayas and sustainability, design and innovation. These are absolutely very timely because mountains in our country or in most of the planet have become a kind of a minority on this planet itself, particularly in higher ranges like Ladakh. You know, it almost comes as close to being in outer space or another planet as you could on the planet Earth, as I'll show you later. So it's very important that mountains which do not get the attention that they should, because they have so many circumstances that are very different from rest of the planet, the big cities, the plains, and so on, require a different kind of outlook on solving challenges. But unfortunately, most of the times we just get sent whatever is developed in big cities like New Delhi or Mumbai or New York. And half the time they don't even work in New Delhi. So you can imagine how these technologies would work in the mountains. So I'm very happy that there is a focus, there is an attention, particularly on the Himalayas and about design and innovation for sustainability. This is a great step, and I hope that it can be, this theme and the spirit can be captured by other institutions, academic and otherwise, so that people in the mountains are attended to and empowered to solve their own problems because they live them. And most often things that come from outside do not work in the mountains. So I thought I'll share with you some examples of design and innovation in sustainable mountain living. Because that is the need of the hour in the Himalayas, as we have seen people moving out of the mountains, thereby, causing a kind of implosion or vacuum in the mountains for skilled young people, and causing explosion in the big cities like Delhi, where such youth from all over the Himalayas crowd in, and it's not good for Delhi or cities like Delhi, nor for the Himalayan towns. So therefore, we have to really attend to the needs and opportunities that can be encashed in the mountains themselves. And seeing that you at CII have an interest in buildings that are sustainable, that are ecologically sound, I thought of sharing that part of my work. There are so many aspects to my work, but I thought living comfortably in the mountains is one of the most important aspects of life in the mountains. Winters are very cold, and half the people migrate because of these cold winters in the mountains. And I'm happy to say today that I'm traveling while I'm addressing to you all. I'm in Delhi, and I came from Ladakh yesterday, and I'm feeling really cold in this Delhi hotel compared to my solar heated house in Ladakh, where the temperature never went below 19 degrees in the last few days that I was there, even if it was cloudy and outside temperatures was minus 15. And yet my room was 19 degrees. And I don't know what the temperature is here, but I am feeling cold, I can tell you. This is an interesting situation, how people from Ladakh would otherwise flee the winters and go to places like Delhi. And I feel like fleeing from Delhi as soon as possible by early morning flight tomorrow. I'm looking forward to getting into my house in Ladakh, which is much, much warmer. So I'll share a bit of that secret with you, because it is very important, very, very important that people in the mountains live comfortably, and they live comfortably without it costing the planet. You can live comfortably, like many government offices and military residences often do. You burn all the oil, throw money at the problem, and you may live comfortably at 20, 22 degrees, but it costs the planet to keep you warm in these conditions. Now, I'm going to share how you can use design instead of money to live happily ever after, and live happily not just alone, but live happily with our other siblings in the wild, all the wildlife, all the natural life on the planet. We should not sacrifice just for human comfort. And I want to share that it is possible to coexist happily rather than one at the cost of the other. So here I'll share a few slides about my journey in Ladakh, so you get an idea of what we do there, and particularly about sustainable, comfortable homes, in the Himalayas. Let me see if I can share my screen from here. Okay, please let me know when the screen share works.
We can see your screen now.
Okay, good. So for those of you who may have a vague idea of where Ladakh is, it's the top north of our country, flanked by China and Pakistan, and it's across the Himalayas, actually not exactly in the Himalayas, but across, and therefore it's a very different scenery than what you expect. Himalayas are lush green. We are across, nature has, you can say, left us high and dry, literally. So it's as close to outer space or another planet, as I said, as it could get on planet Earth, except that you can see the lush green islands or oases that mark, a pleasant difference in Ladakh compared to the moon, for example. Otherwise, it's similar. So this is what humans have added to the planet by, greening deserts and growing barley, wheat, peas, apricots, apples, pears, and so on. So this is one place where humans have actually enriched nature. I'm very proud of that. But as I shared, it's difficult to do things in Ladakh. Just to run a water pipe faucet is quite a circus, and not because there are no technologies, but mainly because we just copy and paste technologies like plumbing from New Delhi and Mumbai, and half the time they don't even work in New Delhi. So you can imagine what chances we have in Ladakh for this. But this is not to say they can't, and that's what we have been doing. We have to innovate to solve our problems ourselves, even though recognizing actually that we are not only a ethnic linguistic minority, but also a technological climatic minority in this vast nation, which is tropical. So despite all these harsh realities, people have not only survived, but a whole civilization has thrived over millennia with its own language, literature, dance, music, and a lifestyle in harmony with nature. And that's what we would like to see continue in future also, without harming others for our comfort. But being a minority, we have had many problems in education, especially in the 80s and 90s. When I came face to face with the situation in Ladakh, 95% of the students used to fail. This was during my engineering time, when I started teaching students to finance my engineering, and I came face to face with this reality that changed my life forever. And I started working to reform the education system. But then through the education system, I could bring innovation to improve lifestyle, realities of life in the mountains, using principles that you find in, high school science and maths and sociology and so on, as you will see. So cutting it shorter, because of these very high rates of failures, we started a school that was meant particularly for those who had failed in the system. And this school, therefore, had a very different criteria of admission. It was not marks or distinctions in your exams, but that you have failed. And if you haven't, you might be on the waiting list, but higher chances are for those who have failed. So this is also a school where we experimented with how to live life in Ladakh. At least there we should not fail, even if we fail in the exams. So this is a little country in the middle of the desert where everything is very different. The buildings are all built with mud, earth, soil right under our feet, and powered by the sun, free, abundant, shining over our heads. So it's a solar-powered, earth-built building, fully autonomous, zero energy, off-grid, started when these terms were not even invented in conventional vocabulary. And this is also a school where the students learn by applying what is in the books in real life. For example, they run the school themselves like a little country where they form a little government, have a little parliament and little elections. And that's how they understand civics and political science, how to manage a nation, because they run the school like a little nation. And students take responsibilities. They have portfolios like our, functionaries in the government. And the responsibilities are not mock, they're real. Some of them would take care of all the cows and the milk. Others would take care of solar gadgets, green organic gardens, power plants, or greenhouses and so on, but they would relate it to what they have in the textbooks also. Like the girl taking care of cows would apply all the statistics that she learned in maths to track the productivity of the cows with her bar charts and graphs and pie charts and so on. Similarly, they live here an eternally sustainable life, where in the background you can see a fully solar-heated building, which needs no fossil fuels whatsoever, not a drop of oil or a blade of wood to keep them warm even through the punishing Ladakhi winters. And in the foreground, you see how they grow their own food using animals like yak and zos rather than tractors. By the way, yaks eat the waste of the farm, and their waste is food to the farm. So you can see the circular economy there. Unlike tractors, which only take diesel, for which you have to take loans, and if you can't pay the loans, then you commit suicide. And what they give is pollution, air pollution and death, and not much more. So freeing them or adapting to such beautiful wisdom from our traditions is a hallmark of this school. I'll quickly go towards the buildings. As I said, how do we keep our place warm? So innovations around earth, sun, ice, and fire are the main themes contextual in these mountains. Our buildings are very simply designed, and it's a coming to life of your high school textbooks. Actually, you can see that the buildings that face south, which is where the sun stays in the winter in the northern hemisphere, you have transparent glazing or greenhouses on the south. You can see below here that the greenhouse traps the sun's heat and air inside becomes hot, and hot air is lighter, as says our heat science chapter, that is convection. And hot air rises, goes into the windows, into the building. It gives its heat to the fat earth walls, becomes cool and dense itself, and is pushed into the greenhouse to be repeated again and again. The cycle continues. This is called convection in chapter on heat in your 9th grade. So the students see it coming alive, that convection can be used to bring the heat of the sun into the room. Similarly, the south walls, which are dark, conduct the heat of the sun, and molecule by molecule, the heat conducted through the wall reaches at midnight into the room. And when all these windows are shut, the warm walls from conduction and convection start radiating inwards, and that's your conduction, convection, radiation that gave you so much trouble in your exams come alive and change life for people in a very cold mountain. So now the buildings are built with a material that is as natural and sustainable as the energy from the sun. And there we thought we don't need to learn from new science, rather ancient wisdom is much better. So we went and learned from our ancestors, from buildings that have lasted long time in our environment. So this building, you can see, we carbon dated it and found that it was 1500 years old. It has no roof, no doors and windows. They have been all plundered, I don't know what, 1,000 years ago, and yet it stands 4 stories tall in a village. And we call these buildings Kacha Makan. I find it very ridiculous that we call these 1500-year-old still standing buildings Kacha, and concrete buildings which have a life of 60 to 100 years certified are Pakka Makan. So we have to relook at such things. So we said we don't have our ancestors around to teach us, but we can reverse engineer and benefit from their wisdom. So we took samples of these best surviving buildings and analyzed in the lab to see what exactly went right for them that they have lasted so long. And then learning from our ancestors what mixes they used, we would then hand it over to the next generation at our school. So apart from just maths and science for exams, they would learn how to use, for example, density and so on, to apply to use ancient materials and build new habitats. And then from this school, when students get all these responsibilities, many entrepreneurs and startups are born because they fall in love with some of the skills they learn and they take it into their lives. Some of these students have become solar builders because we saw that at our school, we may do any number of innovations. It won't reach the outer world unless we have a medium, because people would come and ask us, how do you build a solar house? You can't tell them in an hour, you know, it will be a mess if they build based on that. So we said, why not train some of the students as entrepreneurs who can build, design and build for people outside. And that's how these companies started, like the Third Pole Enterprise. They would design together with the client and then build for them fully sustainable solar heated earth buildings. Now, we started buildings in a very different way. I would like to share with you here that design is not just the mechanisms and the structures. Design is also about marketing, designing the marketing of such products that are beautiful, but otherwise people don't understand. So in Ladakh, as a very different approach, we did not present earth buildings as something for the poor people. You know, most places around the world present earth buildings, mud houses, as poor people's houses. And then what you see is that even the poor people reject it. In Ladakh, we took a very different strategy. We said we should attack the elites, the top end of the society first, and started building houses that could be the pride of the richest. Let me share a little bit of so these are houses that are highly, well finished with the latest science and technology in heating, and that are like pride of stars in California, where rammed earth, this is a rammed earth building. Rammed earth is considered something that only the super rich can afford. That's because in America, labor is so expensive and this is labor intensive. But in our country, labor is the cheapest, and yet we use things like cement, which for them is cheap, for us is so expensive. So it's all upside down that way. So therefore, we started building high-end buildings, which need not look primitive and sad inside. You know, many times people think earth buildings are not as tasteful in interiors. So these are buildings where my friends from US and Europe come and say, I wish I had a building like this in Switzerland, for example, and that's always happens. Now, how to share it with the rest of the world? So outside our school in Leh city, it has been a sad scenario, because people have been copying left, right, and center, buildings in Kashmir, buildings in Jammu, Delhi, and you can see how Leh is developing with the iron tin roofs and uninsulated walls and haphazardly oriented not to the south. And then that causes this. This is a scene from winter in Ladakh, one morning in December. You can see how hell-like it becomes, because people are throwing money at the problem. With economic growth, they have money, but not the technology to do it better. So they just burn more and more, and burn anything from trash to rubber to plastic. And this is what the city becomes. So we said we need to learn and change this world outside our school, but we wanted to be tactful. And we took our lessons from the Tata Nano event phenomena. Okay, here I'm sharing with you a few things about design of marketing. So it was a big hype, the Tata Nano, but you would remember finally it came to nothing. It's vanished, evaporated. And one of the reasons that I think behind this fiasco, if you may call it, was that they positioned it as the world's cheapest car. Now, when people buy cars, they don't buy it to show off that they are in the world's cheapest car. You don't want to show how poor you are when you buy a car. You want to show how well off and you have arrived. So that's what we thought we should not do with earth buildings, that you are in the world's cheapest house and the poor people's house. We wanted the opposite. And therefore, we started this construction company with our students, who then built, as I said, buildings like these for the richest. So we decided we would attack the upper end of the society, the rich end, and make this whole earth building phenomena aspirational for the rich to arrive. And then the poor will automatically come to that. We wanted to support the poor, but the path led through the high end of the society, even to the poor. So these are like designing of marketing. And this is what happened. Let me share you an interesting incident or flow of change in Ladakh. That's 2012, you see. The house you see looks like a cement house, but it is not. It is an earth-built house. Just that in 2012, people felt so small living in an earth house, mitti ka ghar, that they would plaster and color the outer with cement just to show off, pretend as if they are living in a cement house. This was the status of mud or earth in those days. Then came our interventions, where we launched several startups who would do it for the high end of the society by 2014. And we built several resorts and high-end residences and so on. And below you see the phenomena changing by 2018. Now, this building you see is not built by us. It's a concrete building. It's a cement building, but they are plastering it with mud to look as if they're living in a mud house. Yeah. So the mindset has completely changed from 12 to 18, where they wanted to show off cement facade, even if it was not true. Now they're showing off earth, even if it is not true. So this is the marketing that we need to accompany with our innovations. Otherwise, our innovations will just remain in our laboratories or in our minds. We have to be very good at designing the marketing strategies. If I have few minutes, I'll share a few slides about something else that we are working on the building front. Here you see a disaster, a big fire in a military hospital. And this is quite common in places like Ladakh, because the military uses oil and heating, fire, for heating in winters. And very often they meet fire accidents like this. Now, let me show you a bigger fire. This doesn't look like fire. This looks like the Google Earth map, but actually it is a NASA map released by NASA. And you see clouds here on the Himalayas, and then on the plains of India also you see clouds, but these are not ordinary clouds. These are very special clouds. They look like clouds from satellite, yeah? And if you come closer, you see the source of these clouds, and they are fires on the ground, not clouds. In Haryana and Punjab, farmers burn roughly 30 million tons of straw, rice straw in September, October, November, you must know. That's why Delhi becomes this late autumn. So causing, so much pollution by burning these. And to counter and actually use that problem, what we are doing in Ladakh now is designing and building prototypes of prefabricated solar houses. Now, our solar earth buildings take a whole season to finish, or maybe 2 seasons, 2 years. And that's the weakness of it. So we are now working on prefabricated houses that can take weeks rather than months to assemble, and are fully solar heated, need no fossil fuel heating. We are doing it particularly for military and paramilitary that are stationed in Ladakh. This is the first prototype, and I'll share a little bit about it to you. Again, design and innovation. So double glazing on the south with black walls that absorb the heat. And how do you do mud houses that are prefabricated? Mud is not something you move around. Now, this is the beauty of it. You take clay from mountains of Ladakh, very fine clay, and then you take straw from the fields of Punjab where it would be burnt otherwise. So you rescue it from polluting the plains of India, and you ship it or transport it to Ladakh, often with combined with heavy material like iron. So they optimize the density in trucks. And then you mix with Ladakhi clay, this Punjabi straw, and you get a fiber reinforced product like, carbon fiber or FRP, fiber reinforced plastic, fiberglass. Similar concept, but with materials like straw and clay, you get straw reinforced clay blocks, which can render a very light, movable material for buildings, which are also insulating at the same time. And you can build it like a Lego house, Lego game. Like you see here, you build layer by layer. And in reality, if you were to build, this is the prototype that we built. You have cranes that handle these blocks, and you have all the reinforcements, etc. You can have double wall, as you can see here, and can be filled with insulation depending on the altitude you are building for. It's all adjustable, sort of modular, how much insulation you want in it. Here you can see the double leaf of the walls, all separated by 10 centimeters of insulation. And in weeks, the house is finished. South has double glazing and water-filled walls that are very good at absorbing the sun's heat from the day into the night, and actually from sunny weeks into cloudy weeks. And this is the house which will have finally solar photovoltaic roofing, and that would make it completely zero energy or negative energy, because all the energy needed in the building will be provided by the building from the south walls, the heat, and from the roof, all the energy or electricity. Okay, so that was about just a part of our work in sustainable buildings and technology tailor-made for the mountains. We really need to evolve our own technologies in the mountains, and people who live there need to be empowered, because only they would know how to do it. For example, I did my engineering in other places outside Ladakh, but as I finished my engineering, I took a pledge. I took a pledge that come what may, I may spend any time of the year anywhere, but winters I'll spend in Ladakh, because only then I'll know the problems of Ladakh. So ever since then, I've been spending winters in Ladakh. And not only the house, you may have heard about these water solutions like ice stupas. I won't go into this because we don't have time. There's a lot of material on internet. You can check how water from winter can be stored to springtime when water is in short supply. People have added tourism to it, ice cafes and ice climbing, and even ice hotels we are working on, so it can provide water and economic support to villagers. I'm not sharing this in this presentation, but just to say that we are not really proud of these solutions for water or for warm houses in winter, because climate change is coming closer and closer to us. We are not proud, even if this solution won us the Rolex award, but this is not a big solution. There's a but, and that but is a big but. The but is that climate change, which is taking away all our water in the Himalayas, is not caused by people in the Himalayas. It's the whole world, because of their activities, their lifestyle. The greenhouse emissions are causing climate change, and our biggest message, SOS message and innovation has been this social movement calling people from the big cities to cooperate and change their behavior so that we in the mountains can live, or survive. That's why we say, please live simply in the cities so that in the mountains we may simply live. So my message to you all and to the world has been that let's make pledges. It's not enough that some Ladakhis build solar houses or ice artificial glaciers. It's a duty and responsibility of every citizen to change their lifestyle to low carbon and save the mountains and save the seashores which are drowning, and ultimately the rest of the humanity also. And for that we launched the I Live Simply movement, which is another innovation that I wanted to share in the end. This is a campaign where you can pledge and contribute not money, because the planet doesn't need money. Contribute pledges to change your lifestyle from taking aeroplanes to taking trains instead, bicycles instead of cars, vegetarian food instead of non-vegetarian, high energy intensive. So this is what I would finally like to share. And this, of course, is not the end. Thank you very much. Do get connected and let's solve the problems of the mountains. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sonam, for an incredible presentation and yes, a very meaningful ending of living simply, which is very, very important in today's context. Lots to take away from that. And now I'd like to hand it over to Professor Ajit Chaturvedi from IIT Roorkee to talk about sustainable infrastructure and the innovations over there for the Himalayas.
So after a very engaging and thought-provoking talk by Mr. Sonam Vanchuk, I think the main intent of this particular session has been completely driven through the audience, I hope, because the key driving theme of Mr. Wangchuk's talk was sustainability. And I think he took some very simple and illustrative examples to show that how both sustainability is important and at the same time it is possible to be practiced as something in our day-to-day living. So Professor Manisha, Mohan, Mr. Saurav Chaudhary, Mr. Anupam Joshi, thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk at this important Himalayan summit. And I'm happy that the word design has found a prominent place in the title of this summit and this session. And design is something that gets lost in the background most of the time in the face of science and technology, because we always believe that problems need technological solutions and technological solutions need new science. And so a lot of investment and time and effort goes in doing scientific discoveries, making new technologies feasible. And in that process, while we make very important progress and advancements of humanity, we forget that with the existing science and the existing technologies, many important problems facing human civilization can be solved. They don't necessarily need any new research per se. They need innovation. And innovation can happen with a very simple act of making partnerships. This is what my key theme that I want to drive in my 10 to 15 minutes of talk here is that it is important that we look around, spot problems. What are the problems that day-to-day living or in terms of sanitation, in terms of hygiene, in terms of education, healthcare, environment, energy, transportation, you name it, we go through all different kinds of issues and challenges while we get up in the morning to the time we go to the bed. And even during the night time when we are sleeping, there are several things that we encounter as problems. And many of these problems are actually solvable problems. They are not getting solved because we are not making the right partnerships. So partnership with whom? Partnership with somebody who can provide the innovation required to solve that problem. So for that purpose, in every ecosystem, in the Himalayan ecosystem, we have several institutions, whether in Uttarakhand, whether in Ladakh, Himachal Pradesh, Jammu and Kashmir, everywhere a large number of institutes exist throughout this mountainous region, which will be very happy to take up such problems and make their contribution so that it's a win-win situation for everyone. Because these institutes want to do research, these institutes want to solve problems of the country, of the society, of the geographical region. In that region also needs solutions. The civilization in that region also needs solutions. And it's a very simple thing to understand that, as Mr. Wangchuk was repeatedly emphasizing, especially in the beginning of the talk, that the life of plains is very, very different than the life of mountains. So if the life is very different, whether in terms of growing food, whether in terms of harvesting energy, whether in terms of healthcare, transportation, everything. So it needs different solutions. So this part is very well understood that yes, the solutions that can be applied for plains will not naturally carry forward to solutions that for the Himalayan region or for the mountainous region. And that is why a special effort direction is required in this aspect. Having said this, I would like to take this opportunity to drive home the point that at IIT Roorkee, there is a Design Innovation Center. And this Design Innovation Center is exactly geared up to address the challenges of the Himalayan region. And keeping this in mind, we have been always actively looking for more and more partnerships with the society, with NGOs, with the social institutions, with government agencies, with entrepreneurs, so that we can provide more and more innovative solutions which are more easy to manufacture, which are not costly, which can be easy to fabricate, and at the same time which can be marketed and which will be bought by the people. So for example, some of these products that we have developed at our Design Innovation Center at IIT Roorkee are, maybe some of you have heard about it, some of you have not heard. For example, we have developed a crop harvester for the terrains. There is a development of a green furniture based on forest waste materials. We have developed a low-cost mechanical wheelchair. We have developed a briquetting machine. There is a development of an assistive device for porters in hilly areas. Then there is a development of a multi-utility carrier for hilly terrain. And then the DIC is also working on the development of a high-yield loom design for Uttarakhand local weavers. Now, having listed these products, the important point is that many of these products will not be easily reaching the marketplace unless we partner with the people who are entrepreneurs, unless we partner with people who are willing to market these products in the right segment, unless we partner with people who are willing to manufacture these products at a larger scale, unless we partner with entrepreneurs who are willing to give us the feedback that what is it that is missing in the products that we have made. Maybe we are thinking it is good, but if somebody who is the end user actually uses it, the feedback may be that, okay, some more innovation is required. Some more things are required before it becomes really usable. That kind of feedback. And this is what brings me again and again to the important thing with which I started, that is partnership. So if we have to provide these sustainable solutions, useful solutions in the Himalayan region, we need more and more partnerships. And that is why these summits like the CIA summit, they are very important because they bring people from diverse backgrounds, from different entities, institutions to come and speak on common topics, and hopefully they will spark partnerships. The Design Innovation Center at IIT Roorkee has already sparked partnerships with 3 other institutions in the country. In fact, they are known as the 3 spokes for the hub and spoke model that is there, that has been envisaged for the Design Innovation Center. One is the DIC at IIM Kashipur, the other is the DIC at NIT Uttarakhand, and the third is the DIC at the College of Technology, GB Pant University of Agriculture and Technology. And I'm very happy to say that each of these design innovation centers is doing similar things or similar kind of effort is there, just like I listed for IIT Roorkee. So for example, IIM Kashipur specializes in management. So it is not a surprise that it has come up with 3 different schemes for the Himalayan region. One is known as the Himalayan Education Learning Program. The second is the Himalayan Upliftment Movement. And the third is the Himalayan Innovation of Land to Laboratory. So these 3 activities have been taken up at IIM Kashipur. The NIT Uttarakhand has developed 2 projects. One is the tri-wheel trolley for the hilly terrain, and the second is the gold extraction unit from Alaknanda River, which is waiting for administrative approvals. And the DIC at the College of Technology, GB Pant University of Agriculture and Technology, Pantnagar, is involved in several projects. Some of these are a design of a glove for hilly area to maintain a temperature of 30 to 35 degrees centigrade, pine needle compact power fuel based pollution free stove for hilly areas, and food security of people from hilly area through hybrid agriculture and cattle farming. Last is the school level innovative design camps for the solution of local problems. So these are some of the projects that will hopefully catch the attention of the audience, and all these 4 institutes where we have established design innovation centers, these institutes will get more and more partnerships. They will get more and more engagement and connect with the local population so that we can really together make a difference. It will be a situation where these partnerships will be welcomed by everybody, because all of us need to provide these solutions. But some of these problems which are still not got the attention, and they deserve a lot of attention, they also need to be mentioned today. And one of these problems is what is known in the mountainous region, especially in this region, as the man-animal conflict. I think we need to focus on these problems, such as the man-animal conflict. In fact, the Honorable Minister of Education has also highlighted this point, that the DICs and the academic and research institutions in the area need to find more solutions so that we can address this challenge of man-animal conflict. Similarly, a very important raging problem is forest fires. These also need to be addressed. And of course, we know that on one hand, we talk about the challenges of living in the mountains. And the second is we often say that these also offer tourism opportunities. So how do we convert these challenges into tourism opportunities so that the economy of the region is further enhanced and grows? So if we start thinking on these directions, if we start aligning our thoughts in these directions, let me go back to from where I started. Many of the solutions will not need any new discovery of science, will not need any fundamental technological innovation or new technologies to be developed, but there will be new products, new prototypes. And for that purpose, IIT Roorkee will be happy to offer 2 important cells that we have at IIT Roorkee, and which will be offering, which we are ready to partner with all the institutions in this region. One is the TIDES incubator. So where we encourage entrepreneurs to take up startup activities. IIT Roorkee welcomes applications, technology-based applications or product-based applications, which are from entrepreneurs, potential entrepreneurs, if they want to create startups in this region. And second is that we have a very thriving IPR cell. So if you want to protect your innovation in terms of intellectual property, if you want to file copyright, if you want to file patenting, the handholding work can be given by IIT Roorkee's IPR cell. So with these thoughts, I hope that this session is reaching out to the right audience. If the audience is less, I hope there is a YouTube video that will be available on Google so that more people can be able to listen to these important thoughts that are being shared and disseminated in these sessions. Thank you, Professor Manisha Mohan.
Thank you so much, Professor Chaturvedi. These were incredible inputs, and they're very important points that you made in terms of looking at innovation for the mountains differently from the plains. as well as the importance of partnership across and looking at the context very, very differently. And now I would like to hand it over to Mr. Saurav Chaudhary from the CII Green Building Council to talk about the green rating for cities.
Yeah. Can I get? Yeah.
Yes, please.
Whether my screen is visible? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would like to first thank the eminent panel that I have been included in this panel with Mr. Sonam Vanchuk, with Mr. Anupam, Professor Ajit, with Professor Manisha. So I would like to say that yes, IGBC has started working on this subject around 2013, when we thought that yes, focusing on the green buildings doesn't make the only as criteria when we look at the hills, because they are quite different from the plains. So this rating was evolved, and then it's a rating specific for the hill-centric development and to promote the green policies, which the government is also looking at to and the 400 plus hill stations. So I am coming from this Center of Excellence of CII, which is focused on the various subjects like climate change, energy, water, renewable energy, and other aspects. And this is also the first platinum-rated green building in the country, which was inaugurated by His Excellency late Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam in 2004. So since then, we have continuously working on the various areas related to green. So the vision of the council is to enable sustainable built environment for all, and finally, India to become the global leaders in terms of sustainable built environment by 2025. So we have come a long way from the one building. Now we are at around 7.71 billion square foot, which is also makes us a second country in the world with the largest footprint. And this actually caters to around 90 to 92% of the green buildings which are going green in the country. So it cuts across offices, residential, factories, schools, and including the built environment where the railway stations, metros are going green, hill stations, and the cities. So these rating programs are specifically aligned with the relevant typologies, because we feel every typology is a kind of species, because a school rating cannot be adopted by a hospital, and a hospital needs a very specific approach on hygiene and the healthcare facilities. So similarly, the different ratings have been evolved, but today's focus will be specifically on the hill habitat. So these standards are in line with the Ministry of Environment Forest guidelines, Ministry of Housing Affairs guidelines, CPCB. So what happens, anybody picks up any of the rating system, it becomes very comfortable for any of the stakeholder in the construction industry to look at all the aspects in that 40-page or 50-page document. So they don't get into the voluminous documents of National Building Code, ECBC, but majorly relevant to that typology, all the key aspects are addressed. And they also are also looking at the international benchmarks and standards are also highlighted, so that Indian buildings also becomes in line with the international standards. And then IGBC is aligned with ISO Smart Cities norms as well. And then the first decade that we worked, 2001 to 10, was on the buildings. And from 2011 onwards, we started working on the townships, cities, metros, villages. Yes, village is also one of the unique rating that we have in the country, where many of the industry stakeholders are now trying to go for a CSR opportunity in that. So cities which are going green include around 15 to 16 cities. Majority of them are the industrial cities, the industrial greenfield development going green, but also the existing cities like the smart and Amrut cities. So we have one of the city also, I'll talk about it, Kedarnath, which also gone green with us. So now the question is, as Mr. Sonam Vanchuk also highlighted, that yes, we have to go the sustainable way. One of the reasons is that India is going to build two more India, because 70% of India is yet to be built. That is what the McKinsey and other studies which has highlighted. So if this urbanization goes to the extent of from the 490 million to this 650 million, I hope that we need to work towards how we do sustainably the future development. So urbanization has emerged as one of the major reasons of global climate change. We are aware about it. Around 70% of the emissions is from the energy in globally. So we have to look at all these aspects. So if you look at the hill side, 1/4 of the world's countries are actually hilly areas. 50% of the world's population depend on the water source from hills. And even 50% of the entire world is actually dependent on directly or indirectly on hilly areas. So if we look at what is the status in our country, is around 20% of the land area of India is covered by the hills, 9% of the total population, 41% of the forest cover, which is actually the major carbon sink. So over 200 million people are living in the mountains, valleys, and the hills of the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. And now if you look at the globally also, we know that yes, Amazon is the lungs of the planet, which is equivalent to around 48 mainland US states, and it is also generating almost 20% of the oxygen that we need from the entire world. So what forest is actually contributing? So how forest is more important? So, but the present scenario, what we feel as a council that we started, why we started working is that we feel eco-sensitive hill stations need a sensitive approach and scientific approach of development. As a lot of scientific approach has been highlighted by our previous speakers. Yes, we need innovation. We need a lot of scientific approach. So that development strategy has to be different in hills as compared to the plains. And yes, and if there is a difference, what are the differences? So we looked into the differences in terms of site, how it takes a lot of time to create a site, label them, and then start the construction. The pollution levels are high when you have to label the site first and then start this construction. Water pollution is more because every time there will be stormy rains, and then you have to have the stormwater drainage built first before doing the construction. Otherwise, it may your site will be completely damaged. So the things that there is a lot of difference in as compared to the plains when we work on the hills. We talk about the indoor air quality in plains, but in hills, we have the cold, shivering winds. Actually, that is not so good air quality. We have to also have a check on that and how we design our buildings accordingly, and how we do local construction so that a simple machine can do the prefabricated construction within the small site, because the plot sizes are also very small when we doing in the hill areas development, because we create a small plain area doing some protection and measures and slope prevention measures, and then we start working. So why we need sustainable approach is that forest sinks are going down in many of the hill states. We know it has come down drastically, and if you look at the why this major calamities happen, if you see now 77% of the people are actually dying not because of earthquakes, they are dying because of collapsing buildings. So the reason is that we have to look at more approaches like the cutting of slopes and the protection measures. So why hills are losing its architectural style? Where we see that old buildings were built in 1885, and all of them in Shimla. We have big documentaries on YouTube, which we see. But yes, why we're not practicing those and bringing those similar architectural styles or craftsmanship? So today it has going away from it, and it is actually adopting the not so green principles of plains, which is not suitable for hill areas. So traditional architectural style and the craftsmanships are dying. And next, the wildlife encounter. I think this point has also been raised by our previous panelists, that yes, deforestation occurs primarily due to expanding settlements. We know this, and because of which we know this kind of encounters happen. So across the world, it is actually 13 million hectares a year deforestation which is happening. So we need to also look into that aspects. So focus should be on the siting of a hilly terrain, which looks at all these aspects. You all are experts on this, so I'm not getting into detail of each of this: siting practices, investigation of sites, architectural planning. So how the architecture that we are creating is resilient in terms of earthquake, cyclone, climate responsive designs, water sensitive architecture, because 50% of the water gets lost in the hilly areas. It is all because of undulating terrains. We have to also take it to different houses. So there is a lot of water losses which happen. We understand in Jammu it's 50%. So many of the hill states face this kind of challenges. Construction approach, we know it's a cut and fill combo, built up area. We'll have stilt, and then we'll try to do minimum of cutting. That is what becomes optimum in terms of designing. But how we'll address the geological factors, climatological factors, natural hazards, building features, affordable housing component as well, because we can't make it too expensive also. So I would like to share what Mr. Sonam Vanchuk highlighted some time back about the earth building techniques. I would say that is a great opportunity, because people may see where is the earth building projects in the entire world. But yes, they are there. If you see rammed earth buildings, 7-story rammed earth building has been done in Germany, around 5-story rammed earth building in Australia. We have mud block constructions which are there in Morocco. There's cob construction, which is again an earth building technique, which is in New Zealand. We have wetland daub in medieval Europe, and we have got light earth constructions which are in Germany. So it is not like only some of the poorest of the poor will go for this, as it is highlighted. We have to also highlight this kind of alternative technologies, and that is the focus should be there for the hilly areas to become the demonstration projects in the country on this kind of new technologies. And then local materials and craftsmanship, we know about the Kathakoni architecture and many of the unique techniques where even international collaborations happens with the CEPT University, SPAs and others. They go and learn this kind of technologies, sitting in the state, talking to the community, like timber constructions, local indigenous techniques. So what the rating that we have evolved actually captures all of them from the entire country, what are very much specific to India, and it becomes a very good document for anybody who is referring it, with all the preventive measures on resilience to be taken for the earthquake, cyclone, flood, cyclone and other calamities, and even the different techniques which is relevant to the specific region. From the various documents, it has been captured and it has been included into it, and with a lot of technical committee interactions, everything has been frozen as part of the policy frameworks which can go into it as a rating. So the local materials, yes, talked about earthen, bamboo, stone. So we have a lot of expertise. If you see Northeast, a lot of bamboo construction is happening. The bigger stadiums, the bigger indoor complexes are getting created. So there's a lot of potential. The bamboo should not be left to the only baskets and as showpieces. Bamboo has a huge potential. So it is also tapped in one of the IGBC project in Guwahati, which is a GNRC hospital, where they have gone with external cladding with bamboo. So that was majorly on the as a building and the things that are possible. So the rating has addressed the air, water, land, energy, waste, mobility, the major challenges what our country is facing in terms of the shortage of land, shortage of energy, and the water crisis. We know that around 21 cities are going to face this crisis in the coming coming decades. So we need an inclusive and consensus-based approach, and this is the approach IGBC encourages for all rating systems, that all the key stakeholders should be involved, starting from the ministry to the different stakeholders, developers, architects, citizens. So we try to involve them as part of whoever possible. The document has been also interacted with architects and experts, and they have given their inputs. We know the key aspects to. So I will share just a glimpse of those aspects, like the soil erosion, landslides, and the possible measures we know: city soil mapping, sedimentation control, proper stabilization. If we talk about water, the major challenges are just in front of us: the flash floods, huge water losses, and solutions also we know to some extent, like the avoid development in floodplains. These are very few of the examples we have given as many possible measures. There can be many measures which the experts can share from your side. But yes, we have tried to capture all of them, and we tried to look at what are the challenges and what can be the policy initiatives which can be taken, like the burn ban restrictions in the dry and windy weather, restrict outdoor burning of certain kind of wood stoves, air quality monitoring, encourage NMT, e-vehicle policy. In terms of green cover, also we know that these are the challenges that we have in terms of loss of species, wildlife, felling of trees. So how to handle these challenges? Resilience in terms of the earthquake, landslides, windstorms, steep slopes. Early warning systems is something that is required. Even when we are at the Integrated Mountain Development Summit sometime back in Darjeeling, they were highlighted because many of the states doesn't have this focused early warning systems. So I think the things are improving. The local hazard zonation maps, landslide zonation maps, geotechnical investigations are not mandatory. So there is a possibility on all those aspects. So the rating will look at all those possible measures as an opportunity, and will try to work very differently in the hill stations. Like the municipal solid waste is a major problem. I have seen it in my state itself, because I belong to Shillong, where I've spent most of my life actually. So we can see that yes, solid waste is an issue, and then it is handled to some extent. So we need how the cities are going to handle the hill cities and towns, the wild dump sites, small size of the towns. We know the solid waste is an informal sector, how to handle all of these issues. Sanitation and hygiene, where we have the kitchen waste to be diverted, household without latrines, septic tanks are the major way, because they can't take the waste from one place to another. It is difficult because of the infrastructure difficulties, and the mandate of no toilet and no building approvals for this, or ban on open defecation, open toilets. So these are the things that we can see some of the possibilities. In terms of the mobility and parking, there are infrastructure gaps. Chronic traffic congestion is there. We know that hawkers will be there because we need them at the shopping streets. Then if there's a hawker and there's no space to go when the car is going, how a senior citizen or children will be standing on the edges of the roads? We have to also look into that aspects. So lack of adequate footpath resulting in accidents. So widening of roads, policy to prevent and remove encroachments. We know some of them, these are the possible measures. So in terms of the brownfield development, we don't have much of spaces left. So we have to also look at abundant industrial units, wastelands declared by ICR, which are not good for agriculture, but can be used for development. So the rating highlights all those aspects as a possibility, and efficiencies in services like the losses, power cuts, and other issues that we have, or the dark streets, how we can look into the 100% metering, or how can optimize the energy consumption at this stage. So I'll talk about some of the top 15 concepts that we have this rating addresses, starting from the eco vision, where it looks into all these aspects, as where the city can look at land use, health and well-being, waste management. So they create some measurable goals. So Dehradun Smart City, they plan for an eco-friendly knowledge hub of the region. So that is a major vision, but we need some measurable goals after this also. So these points highlight us what are the measurable goals. Looking at example of Singapore, just for an example, that these are some of the vision, how they have broken down this vision into simple measurable indicators, like 700-kilometer length of cycling track, 75% modal share of public transport and NMT. So we have to look at some measurable indicators. at every aspect, the energy, water, and all the aspects. So resilient measures is the second thing that we looked at, and it talked about the altitude, weather conditions, population density, how the challenges will be. So this rating system will help you to identify the how we should reduce our expansion in those areas. Policy implement some corrective actions in the flood-prone areas like the NDMA, by the which is highlighted by NDMA. So all these will get a list on this document. Plus, it talks about how you will be doing the vulnerability tables and other things. You will encourage, the rating will encourage the city to look into all those aspects as an opportunity. So we are giving some examples here, like other cities have done. So we know how the some of the cities, the wetlands areas have been completely gone into the development activities. Or there's an example of Gujarat where the entire Surat, they have created a urban forest by themselves. So these are the examples from Indonesia and others where hill cities have looked into the flood mitigation strategies or and disaster risk reduction strategy. That is one of the major strategy now all hill cities are focusing on. City soil conservation, how we can make the mandatory city soil mapping and then look into the aspects. Preservation of water bodies and tree cover. Preservation of tree cover, I would say there's a geotagging, which is also very important. Like Chandigarh is almost geotagged most of its plants.
If I may speak, sir,
I'll finish in 1 minute. Is it okay?
We're running out of time a little bit.
Yeah, just for time. I'm on the closing slides only. Yeah. Okay. So I already talked about this, how we degraded areas, like the examples I'm showing from one of the tehsil of the in Odisha, or the mine rich areas have been converted into completely a good town. And then this mapping of the environmental degraded areas in Stockton, Hong Kong. So there's a possibility where we look at the Singapore, they're talking about how the city within a garden they can plan about and enhanced green cover, and accessibility is also very important. And now, why we are always having the international cities as the best quality of life in the country, how we can focus on all those aspects of the air quality, smoke-free policy, and then barrier-free accessibility for the entire city, and then wastewater treatment, like where New Water of Singapore talks about targeting 55% of that water to bring into the system by 2060, where they 40% they're already there. So there's a lot of opportunities where international cities are looking at the localized treatment plants, and then solid waste management, where they are doing the mapping of the types of waste generated, and they have got recyclers where they can go and hand over those kind of wastes. And then Hong Kong, which is 60% hilly terrain, actually have multiple options of public transport, and they are one of the best example in the world on the public transport now. First and last mile connectivity, which is now to some extent it's there in the hill stations these days. So the focus is also on the cities encouraging alternative fuel options, and it's a pedestrian network, energy efficiency, the big targets which are being set by many inter countries. And in India also, we know that we are actually in the recent meetings also we have said that we want to enhance our target, and public sanitary conveniences, smart parking, mountain livelihood. So historic buildings are important. There's a lot of heritage work going on in partnership. So this is the rating program. So for more details, you can write to me. My details will be on the IGBC website. When you go habitat rating system, you'll be able to know more about it. So it has got a lot of intangible benefits. Many of them is much available to everybody. The city landscape cover, watershed areas, all these need to be enriched. And then all these standards have been referred while developing this rating system. We have a technical committee working on this subject since then. And then the rating was launched in the presence of Honorable Chair, World Green Building Council, Ms. Lisa Wade. And then this is the first city which is rated, Kedarnath Redevelopment in Uttarakhand. We'll be happy to partner with all the hill cities and states. We did a program with IIT Roorkee also, with attention from almost 200 participants from the northern states who came and attended this session, with expert discussions on all those subjects, where we have experts from IITs and the various other organizations who participated. Thank you so much. Look forward to questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chaudhary. You brought up some very important points over here in terms of having measures and concrete goals towards infrastructure development as well as urbanization, which is very important considering the environment that we are in the hilly region. Now I'll hand it over to Mr. Anupam Joshi to talk about from World Bank to talk about smart manufacturing in this area. We have limited time, so requesting if we could cover this in the next 7 minutes or so.
Yes, I'll try my best. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Actually, मुझसे पहले जितने वक्ताओं ने जो बातें करी हैं, अगर हम उन सबको साथ मिला लें, then we are really talking about smart manufacturing or build back better, जिसके बारे में I want to talk about. So I will not go into context because I think everyone has already highlighted it quite a lot. The foundation why this is needed has been laid out very nicely by my previous esteemed speakers on the panel. So based on our experience of working with the state governments and central government in supporting India and the states on their development trajectory, I think I am going to just share 8 points which points towards how we can do a good economic recovery, a better economic recovery, especially in a post-COVID era. So we all understand that business as usual is not that we should go for. So we have to build a new normal, and what that normal can look like. So I'm going to focus on the hill states as the topic of the seminar. So my first area is that, which has already spoken about a bit by Saurav and then previously Sonam, is on capitalizing on the natural tourism, nature-based tourism, NBT. That is the first aspect which I think, while targeting economic recovery, this sector is one which is picking up. If you look globally, nature-based tourism is one of the fastest growing sector until the COVID happened. And now for economic recovery, especially for the local communities which stand to benefit the most, this is the first area that I think is very critical. Of course, Uttarakhand, and as Saurav just mentioned, Kedarnath is nature-based tourism is also often mixed with cultural tourism, religious tourism, and which our hill states are really, really, blessed with the opportunities. Second area I want to mention is developing value chains for non-timber forest produce and medicinal and aromatic plants. Again, these are resources which are abounding in our hilly environments, our hilly states, Northeast, ले लीजिए, या Uttarakhand or Himachal ले लीजिए, Jammu and Kashmir ले लीजिए. NTFPs and medicinal and aromatic plants can support a very good economic recovery. This will also spur, manufacturing at the household level, at the MSME level. So again, there's a lot of potential to bring communities, bring MSMEs into the picture while focusing on a greener recovery pathway by using these. The third area, which I think has been least talked about right now, is the area of resource efficiency and pollution prevention. I'm very happy that the two professors on the panel talked about innovation and designing. So resource efficiency and pollution prevention are two critical needs of our times, as well as can create economic space, can create additional jobs, as well as contribute to fixing the environmental degradation, which is often generated from other sectors. Then I'd like to bring a new terminology here, which we are these days talking about and calling it as cellulose economy. Essentially, the Tarai and the foothill areas of the Himalayas are very good for growing trees, plants, farm forestry, things which can contribute towards a lot of paper, pulp industry and others. Some of our industries are already doing contract farming in this aspect, especially in Yamunanagar area and elsewhere. But we see that there is a huge scope of cellulose, especially now when plastics are being banned in hill states, and plastics, everyone is searching for alternatives for plastics. I think cellulose, which are biodegradable, has a huge potential. And here comes the role of innovation and design. And I'm sure people in our country elsewhere are already looking into it. So cellulose economy is something that we can build in hilly areas, which is bound to be very, very useful. My fifth direction is basically on capitalizing on biotechnology revolution. Somehow our hill states have not really used this, but if you look at the environments that we have in our mountains, these are, mostly disease-free. You don't need huge air conditioning because of the advantage of the climate. It's pollution-free. So keeping animal houses and others would be of great advantage and less costly. You do not need cooling expenditure to keep your animals in good health. And at the same time, generating antibodies and vaccines, etc., could be very, very useful. So biotechnology is an area where our hills can really capitalize on, which they haven't really gone for. Let me also quickly mention, in some hill states, while horticulture has done really well, states like Uttarakhand can still do a lot in improving its economy in terms of horticulture. Lastly, I want to talk about land restoration as an area which is really, really useful both for our hills as well as very good for manufacturing. Now and let me also mix land use planning in this. So if we talk about good manufacturing, if we talk about building back better, we need to create spaces, because I don't think we have the luxury of diverting any more forest land or agriculture land to other purposes. As Saurav mentioned, McKinsey reports, etc., talk about that 70% of India is yet to be built. There is real risk of losing more of natural areas because of this, because of the grey infrastructure. So there's a need to do a green-grey infrastructure, building them together, which Saurav ran through his presentation. At the same time, very recently a report has come out from TNC, the Nature Conservancy, which looked at the solar ambition of India. As you know, the Solar Alliance, India has huge ambitious targets to generate solar energy. Now, according to TNC report, India might lose 11 million hectares of forest and agriculture land. This report came out last year, because you need huge land parcels to put up solar parks. So while it's wonderful to have solar energy, there are other part of the realities which might become issues for us as we move forward in this. So land restoration, therefore, becomes a very, very critical element of green recovery as well as better manufacturing. And especially, some of these points which my previous speakers also mentioned integrate themselves in what we call by different names, whether you call it greening the economy, greening the infrastructure, build back better, or green growth. There are several terminologies that are being used, but essentially our effort is, especially in the post-COVID era, to make sure that we do not follow the same business as usual path that we were doing right now. This is a great opportunity to correct some of these things. Now, at the end, I want to just mention why and how all these things will contribute towards. So we know India has, three major targets in front of it. And if we focus in our hilly states on these growth sectors, then I think we stand to contribute a lot towards these three targets. The first target is of our National Forest Policy, which was framed in 1988. And there is a draft version that has come out in 2019, which talks about achieving 33% forest cover for India. We are currently at about 24%. Now, India, if we look at the current rate of forest growth in India, while I'm not commenting on forest quality, which sort of showed that the hilly states are actually seeing deforestation and forest degradation, if we just look at forest area, it will require about 100 years for us to reach the current forest target of 33%. But if we start investing in these greener growth pathways, this time period can be significantly shortened. The second target India has given itself is up to 3 billion tons of carbon sequestration. So when we talk about horticulture, when we talk about land restoration, when we talk about green economic pathways, NTFPs, this will directly contribute towards what I call often as logged carbon. So you grow a tree, you use the timber, and you log the carbon for a very, very long time when you use that timber, instead of just putting it to combustion and releasing the carbon. And the third target that India has given itself is the Bond Challenge. Under the Bond Challenge, for restoring 26 million hectares of degraded land. Our hills, both Tarai as well as the mountain areas, can provide several parcels of land which require restoration. And again, adopting these green approaches, would be immensely useful and contribute towards land restoration. So looking at the time, I did not brought in the context that I wanted to, but I'm happy that our previous speakers had already, built that context. So with these words, over to you, Manisha. Thank you.
Thank you so much, highlighting some very important points. I'm sorry that you were at the end, so could not really cover maybe some aspects, but it was very enlightening and really looking at the materials and the context available within the Himalayan region and how it should be used for greener manufacturing. I think you raised some very pertinent points. Thank you so much. I think we may not have time for questions, possibly. Shreya, correct me if I'm wrong. Right. So, because we've also reached the end of this session in terms of time, but I'd really like to thank all the panelists for raising very pertinent and excellent points about how to develop this region, how to really look at the hilly region differently in terms of infrastructural development, innovation, and education, and really manufacturing. So really looking at it holistically. And as I felt in the beginning, we really need to work together and have a shared vision for this area to make a difference and to really see how design and innovation can contribute towards sustainability over here. With that, I'd really like to thank the CII team and Professor Pradyumna Vyas for inviting all of us to be a part of this wonderful panel. Thank you.